Have you ever read card text and unsure when you could actually play the card? Have you ever played a card thinking that you had a good play, only to come to find out that you actually played it at the wrong time? So hopefully we can clarify some things in today's video. We're going to be going through each of the steps of the turns and phases, and I'm going to show you which cards you can play when and what text you need to be looking out for in order to play a card at a specific time. There are hundreds, even thousands of different scenarios in which you can play a card, your opponent can play a card. We won't talk about what actually happens when you play the cards. Point of this video is just for you to understand when you can play the cards. What words specifically on the card allows you to play it at a specific point during your turn or your opponent's turn, and what happens, I guess, or what triggers certain cards. There are certainly a lot of keywords that we're going to have to go over, a lot of cards that we're going to be covering in today's video. So let's get started. If you do enjoy the video, be sure you hit that thumbs up. If you're looking for more beginner guide videos, just check the playlist on the channel for guides. We're going to start it off with every person's turn starts with the start of turn phase. And currently we do have a card, Antarctica, which is a clash ground. Key word in this card, or at this point of the game, is going to be start of turn. And so as you see in the effects down there, at the start of each player's turn, deal 1 damage to all alpha cards. So if you have this in your clash ground at the start of every turn, you're going to deal 1 damage to all alpha clash cards. Now keep in mind, at the time of making this video, only set 1 has been released. And so I do anticipate other tags, other triggers, other things during the game that you're going to be able to play when set 2, set 3, set 4, and so on are going to be released. So at this time, only set 1 has been released, and currently we don't really have any cards that trigger on the ready phase. Moving on to the draw step though, there are cards that do have some triggers during this step of the expansion phase. In Clarity, Ageless Defender, the Contender is one of them. At the beginning of your draw step, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck, then put any one of them on the top or the bottom. Now that is before you draw your single card in your draw step, but key words here being at the beginning of the draw step. Amazon Rainforest has the ability where during the draw step of each player's expansion phase, you draw 1 additional card and then discard 1 card. Now the resource step, much like the ready step, we currently do not have any cards that are going to trigger any sort of abilities. Now there are cards that do allow you to lay extra resources, but those activate during a different point of the game or different point of your step, not actually during your resource step of your expansion phase. Now we're moving on to primary phase. A couple things to note here that we won't talk about. I'll just assume that you understand the cost of each card. And now obviously you have to play resources in order to play these cards. This is the total resource cost, and underneath it, the little smaller diamonds, is the color specific resource cost. Another thing to note, that during the primary phase, you can do these things in any order you see fit. Just for the sake of this video, I am going to go in this order just for some structures so we can look at any specific or each specific thing. So the first thing we can do during our primary phase is to play a clash ground. Keywords when you play a clash ground during your primary phase is going to be the trigger enter. And any clash ground that has the trigger enter, when you play that clash ground, that is when it's going to activate. And for Amazon Rainforest, you may draw 1 card. Denver allows you to draw 2 cards, then discard any card in your hand. Then Garfield Park, each player draws 1 card, then discards a card. There are, of course, plenty more of triggers or trigger enters on Clash Grounds, on the actual Clash Grounds. I just wanted to give you plenty of them. But keep in mind that anytime you play a card in the game, especially during your primary phase, when you play a card like a Clash Ground or a Clash card or anything like that, it goes into a standby zone, which allows the opponent to be able to counter said card. And in this particular case, when players, or if I was playing and I laid down or entered or played a clash ground, there is a counter to that. And once you place that into standby, T-Bone, the Vindictive, can counter that play. I am playing a clash ground. T-Bone, the Vindictive, can counter it. The next time a clash ground would enter into play, you may send this card to Oblivion to return that clash ground to its owner's hand. It does not enter play. Key thing with this card is that T-Bone actually has to be in play in order for you to activate this particular counterplay. And so you can't play it as a counter to the play itself from your hand, but you can counter the clash ground if it is on the board in play. So the key words for these cards for your opponent to be able to counter play is, well, the counter play. And of course it has to say a clash ground specifically. Currently, at least as far as set 1 goes, this is really the only option. Set 2, though, on the other hand, I do suspect there will be more. Another thing, of course, we could do is to play a clash card. Now, once we pay that resource cost of whatever clash card we want to play or enter into the game, that is when you're going to look for the same sort of trigger. Same like what you did with the clash ground cards. We're going to be looking for the trigger enter. It is entering into play. Obviously, the only difference then of the previous card is that this time it's a clash card. So all clash cards that do have that trigger enter mechanic, you're going to be able to trigger something. In this particular case, Scenario Fierce Fighter, you may send another clash card you control to Oblivion. If you do, Alpha Clash cards from Oblivion with initial resource cost of 2 or less, put it in ready to play. Moxie preparing for battle. When she enters into play, you may draw a card. Morak on the hunt, you may send a target clash ground with an initial resource cost of 3 or less. So kind of like T-Bone, except you only play T-Bone to counterplay somebody. Morak can actually get rid of the clash ground when you enter him. Mean Streak, Newfound Powers, put 2 streak counters on this card. Kagan the Dragon, you may send a target clash card to Oblivion. Now, just like with the clash grounds and all other cards, I do want to say again, all cards when you play them go into standby. And so that gives the opportunity for for your actual opponent to counter it. And in this particular case, if you play a clash card, your opponent can counterplay that clash card with those keywords counterplay, because all you're doing is just playing the card. You're not initiating an attack. You're not attacking or anything like that. All you're doing is playing it, putting it on the board. So there are numerous traps that have a counterplay mechanic. Now, of course, with traps have to already be on the board face down. And so in this particular case, for this counterplay, you may activate this trap if the clash card being played has an initial resource cost of 3 or less. When that card enters play, deal 2 damage to that card. Now, with these particular cards, you really have to pay close attention to keywords when that card enters play. So that means that whatever clash card that somebody laid, like if I was to lay a clash card and has a trigger enter tag, that trigger enter would then resolve. And then when that card has entered play, deal 2 damage to that card. We also have a Moxie Sharpshooter or Sharpshooter Moxie counterplay. Again, when somebody plays a card and it goes into standby, or when someone plays a clash card, it goes into standby, Sharpshooter Moxie has the chance to activate. You may activate this trap if the clash card being played has initial resource cost of 2 or less. That card is sent to Oblivion instead of entering play. So if I was to play a clash card and someone counterplayed that clash card, my trigger enter would no longer activate because Sharpshooter Moxie sends the card to Oblivion before it enters play or instead of entering play, unlike the last trap. Spiritual Defense, counterplay, you may activate this trap if the Clash card has an initial resource cost of 2 or less when it enters play, -1/-1 until end of turn. So again, key words here, counterplay. If somebody plays a Clash card, they're going to have a trigger enter. You can counter, or your opponent can counter with a counter play. Next thing that we could do during our primary phase is going to be to play basic action cards. And really the only thing you need to keep an eye out for here is on the bottom right hand side of the card down here, it's going to say action card. And on the bottom left of the card is going to be a basic card. There are different types of action cards, but only during the primary phase are you allowed to play basic action cards. So stuff like Ancient Protection, which sends a target accessory to oblivion. Clarify, take control of an Alpha Clash card an opponent controls and put it into your Clash zone ready. Magnate's Plan, send target accessory to oblivion. Now remember, this is just covering set 1. Set 2, 3, 4, 5, all of those release in the future. I am sure there's going to be counters to these particular types of cards, but currently there's really not a lot that the opponent can play in order to counter a basic action. We can also lay trap accessories. Now, there is no triggers when it comes to just laying the trap, because you don't actually activate it when you lay the trap. You just, or set the trap. You lay it face down on the board and you don't pay its resource cost or anything like that. And so nothing in the text is going to trigger until you activate it. So if you set a trap or lay down a trap face down, nothing happens with the card. Then we got non-trap accessories that you can play or enter them into play. And right now, at least as far as set 1, they were just weapons. Set 2 is going to bring relics. And these sort of cards, the weapons, some of them do have a trigger enter. Remember, the enter just means playing it on the board. You're paying the resource cost, you're putting it on the board into play. And so Clarity's Dagger has a trigger enter because it is a weapon accessory, or it goes into the accessory spot and it is a weapon. So your contender is going to gain 1 health. Another thing that we can do is initiate clashes, but before we initiate the clash or go into the clash phase, another thing that we can do is engage certain cards. Now, when you engage the card, it is not going into a clash phase. It's just certain things trigger, certain abilities trigger if you actually engage the card. And so what text you're going to be looking for is during the primary phase, it has to be in this phase, the primary phase, you may engage this card. If you do, deal 1 damage to target Clash card. Flare, once per turn during primary phase, you may engage this card. If you do, deal 1 damage to target Clash card or contender. Now keep in mind, keywords, of course, primary phase, engage this card. But once you engage the card, that card or this card will no longer be able to defend or attack. So now we're going to initiate the clash and go into our clash phase. First thing that we're going to do in our clash phase is going to be our attack step. That is the one in which you declare whether or not you want to attack the contender or attack a specifically engaged card, or if you have close combat, engage a ready card. And so the text on the card, what you're going to be looking for is the trigger attack tag. So anytime a clash card has a trigger attack on it, when you initiate the clash and you declare who you're going to attack, this is what is going to activate. Deal 2 damage to all other clash cards. Sonaro, the Awakened Breaker. This card gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then you draw a card. If the contender's green alpha, you may ready a clash card you control with an initial resource cost of 1 or less. So this ability is going to activate each time Sonaro is going to attack. And so once you enter that trigger attack or the attack step of the clash phase, then these are the words you're going to be looking for. Toric Overflowing Energy also has a trigger attack. Deal 1 damage to your contender. We also have a weapon that has a trigger attack, even though it doesn't have the specific trigger attack text in it. It is if a attached Weber's Binoculars is attached to a clash card and that clash card then attacks, then this Weber's Binoculars is going to activate. And so you can look at the top 3 cards of the deck, reveal an accessory clash card, 2 or less, put it into your hand. So it's not always going to be the trigger attack. At least in this case, it is going to be just reading the text and seeing that as long as it's attached and that clash card attacks, then this will activate. Now moving on to the counter step, and this is probably the most used tag on all the cards, at least as far as set 1 goes. It's on a ton of them, and this text that you're going to be looking for is going to be the counter attack tag or counter attack text. And so this is only when you counter attack a clash card. So a clash card has to be attacking. And then any card that you have, whether it be a action card, a clash card, or whatever you got that has, or a trap, if it has counterattack on it, then you can activate it at that time. So after an opponent declares an attack, you may engage this card. If you do, negate that attack. Now with Apex, it does have to be on the board in order for you to engage it. It can't be in your hand. There are also traps that could be activated. Counterattack, attacking clash card gets -3/-3 until the end of turn. There's also quick action cards. So we did have basic action cards, and those could only be used during the primary phase, but quick action cards do have a specific trigger point. And in these particular cases, or at this particular case, counter attack. And so since somebody attacked me, I can prevent all clash damage that would be dealt during this clash, then deal 2 damage to the contender. Now, one trap that can actually be played on either side for set 1. So if I play a clash card and my opponent plays a counter trap or a counter attack trap card, I could then play a counter trap. And so that would negate the effects of the target trap being activated. Then it is sent to oblivion. So the gotcha card currently, at least as far as set 1 goes, this is the only counter trap card. And so if an opponent plays a trap, or if I play a trap to my opponent, then either one of us could counter trap that trap. So after those effects have resolved, we move on to the obstruct step. Now, there are no current cards currently in set 1 that have some sort of activation during the obstruct step. Next set though, in set 2, I do remember seeing one that was an exclusive item part of the Clash kit. Certainly recommend getting their hands on that. I think the card looks amazing, but at least as far as the obstruct step goes, we don't have any for here. Then moving on to the attacker buff step, and down here at the bottom right, another type of action card, and this can only be played during the attacking or defending, depending on obviously which one you are, but whatever one you are, either the attack or defense, that is going to be your clash buffs. They are going to be action cards, and you can only have 4 of them in your hand, and only 1 can be played at a time. So each color does have color specific or affiliation specific clash buffs. And as long as they are the action cards, and as long as it says clash buff down there at the bottom left, this is the only time during your attacker buff and defender buff steps in which you can use these cards. And as far as set 1 goes, there are no cards that have specific activations during the clash phase damage step. Just keep in mind that once the damage step is completed, all surviving clash cards, the health returns to the pre-clash amount, unless some non-clash damage was dealt before the clash even began. So if you remember Antarctica, at the start of each player's turn, deal 1 damage. Well, that damage lasts all the way until the very end of the turn. And so if it's only clash damage itself, after everything is resolved, whatever surviving clash cards are left over, their health then resets to pre-clash amount. And only till the end of turn is when all damage on all cards or all non-clash damage is going to reset. Now, in the event that a clash card does get reduced to 0, there is going to be a tag in which there is a trigger defeat. Now, this keyword is very important when it comes to defeat. In order to be defeated, the defense or the health, whatever it is, however you want to look at it, but normally the defense, if the defense is reduced to 0, then that card is defeated. You can send cards to oblivion and get rid of cards without reducing the health to 0. So in the case of a clash, if there is a battle or a clash and that health is reduced to 0, then all cards that have a trigger defeat will then activate. So Magnate Cunning Planner is going to draw 1 card. Plasmax, if he is defeated, he is going to ready up 2 cards in the resource zone. Toric Expelling Energy, you may deal 2 damage to target contender or clash card. So now we're at the end of turn, and all damage, all defense, all everything for all of your clash cards is now reset, and then your opponent is going to go. And I'm going to assume that there's probably going to be some sort of tags in future sets that do have end of turn, like at the end of turn, you can draw an extra card or something like that, which would be pretty cool. But either way though, that is pretty much all of the triggers currently in the game when you can play the card, what turn or what phase of the game you have to actually be in order for you to play it, and what keywords that you're gonna look out for. So hopefully this video helped you. Hopefully you found it informative. And if you have other ideas of any type of beginner guides that you wanna see, let me know in the comments. If you're new to the channel and want more Alpha Clash content, be sure you stay tuned. December 1st is approaching, about 2.5 weeks to go. Super excited for set 2. Can't wait for it to come out. And hopefully I see everybody again soon. Subscribe if you're new, and y'all take it easy. Keep clashing.